Yes, it's John G. Sutton. Tales from the jails. Today I want to talk a little bit about work in prisons. You know that prisoners conduct work when they're in prison, in the British prison system. Generally speaking, yeah, a lot of the work, certainly was when I was working in the prisons, was conducted by prisoners. Things like the cooking in the prisons was supervised by and organised by cook and baker officers who were cook and bakers, and very often these had been ex-military trained cook and bakers who joined the prison service and immediately from being discipline officers had transferred into the cook and baker category, and that's what they were doing. It included things like butchering and the preparation of meals, and the inmates served the meals to the inmates. Inmates were responsible also for keeping the prisons clean. There were what's known as red bands, so they had like a red band that they wore, and they were allowed practical on their landings. You see, they would keep the landings clean, and when the cells had to be cleaned out, then the red bands would go in there and clean them out. Inmates in general would undertake tasks, work tasks such as sewing mailbags. That was a big thing, certainly at Strangeways. First time I saw them, 200 inmates sat down in rows on wooden benches sewing mailbags. It was like a scene from Oliver Twist or some Dickensian novel. With officers sat on large elevated platforms overlooking the prisoners. There's one former officer who reads on this site, who is a subscriber to this site, tells me that he spent, I think it was 6 years at Strangeways, in charge of the mailbags. Yeah, imagine doing that, mailbags. Six to the inch, I think it was, something like that. 6 stitches to the inch. Proper mailbags, imagine that. Yeah. Anyway, if you think that's bad in Britain's prison, they were doing certain other things as well. We had orderlies that worked with the hospital staff when I was a hospital officer, but they certainly weren't doing anything other than keeping the wards clean and keeping the cells clean, and generally following direct instructions to maintain a certain degree of hygiene in the ward and in the prison units. But they were doing that under the supervision of staff. But you'd have a red band who was in charge of cleaning the floors and cleaning the bathrooms and the toilets, and they kept that clean. I had an incident with Norman Brown and the number one governor, Norman Brown, and the number one chief officer, Rawlinson, I believe his name was. They came into the hospital ward when I was the hospital officer in charge of the ward at Strangeways. About 20 inmates in beds, people who were psychiatrically disturbed, people who were diabetic and going through requirements to maintain their diabetic incidents, people who were on changes of medication, people who were suffering from nervous breakdowns, people who were in there for psychiatric reports from the courts. And generally speaking, it was run like a proper hospital ward. Certainly it was when I was in charge. And one day, Norman Brown and the chief officer, Rawlinson, came round. You can see them. All you've got to do is look on the YouTube, type in Strangeways 1980, and you'll see them in the third episode. It's called Screws. There's Norman Brown stood on the centre, and Chief Officer 1 Rawlinson. Yeah, he was a member of the Prison Officers Association, believe it or not, and also a Freemason. And Norman Brown, who was the number one governor, he was a Freemason. And these two came to see me in the ward, and they called me over, and Norman Brown said to me, pointed at the floor, said, "Mr. Sutton, I want you to tell me why there is this big mark in the middle of your hospital floor, a big, and what it was when they'd laid the tiles, when they'd put the tiles down on the floor, somebody had spilt adhesive. This might have been going back 20 years before I'd been anywhere near the ward, but it was something that he decided that needed to be dealt with. So I said, if you'll just give me 1 second, sir, I'll get this dealt with immediately. And I called over the red band and I said, come with me, I think it was 9, actually, just some off the top of my head, 946 Green or whatever, Smith, whatever, come with me. And I took the red band with me and I said, sir, I'd like you to meet 946 Smith, who's the red band in charge of cleaning the floors and all the ward, and he deals with such things. I'm the hospital officer, and I deal with the patients. I said, but I'm sure he'll be able to explain to you why there is a mark on the floor, and I'll go and check the patients' blood pressures and etc. and deal with their medications. Thank you very much. And I about turned and pissed off. You should have seen the look on Norman Brown's face. And the chief officer looked like he was ready to explode. But what could they say to me? I mean, I was the hospital officer in charge of the patients, not the hospital officer in charge of scrubbing the floors. Stupid people. I got a right bollocking for that. Seriously, I got called down by the chief officer. What's all this about? Mr. Sutton, you introducing the red band in charge of cleaning to the #1 governor. I said, well, he was asking silly questions about marks on the floor that have been there for like 20 years. Nothing to do with me. I said, I look after the patients, the people on the ward. Yeah, me being a hospital officer, them being patients, yeah. Get out of my office, all that nonsense. Anyway, if we think we're badly off in the UK, yeah, and certainly they were, in Alabama, USA, they've got real troubles. They're on strike there, believe it or not. All the inmates who do the cleaning, the laundry, the serving of the food, the preparation of the food, all on strike. 13 prisons, 20-odd thousand prisoners, all on strike, refusing to work. They don't get paid, you see. The majority of which are of what we call ethnic minority groups, black inmates, yeah. In Alabama, they seem to be a little bit racist over there, I've never understood this racism bit. I mean, come on, we're human beings, eh? Yeah. Imagine what they'd think if the Alpha Centauri looking down on Earth saying, the Earth population, yeah, but they're all split into little bits. Are they mad or what? Yeah, seriously, they must be mad. But anyway, in Alabama, there's a strike going on. It started on the 26th of September, and they're refusing to do any work, which they don't get paid for any work anyway. And the state of Alabama is having to fund this, and they can't do it. They're 547 correctional officer staff, that's prison officers, short. They can't recruit them. There's over 20,000 inmates in the Alabama prison system. It's actually designed to take 12,000, so they're virtually at least 2 to a cell, aren't they? They're not getting any proper mental health support. The medical services are collapsing. The whole thing is in a diabolical state. Hey, but that's Alabama. Did you see Alabama? You look it up. Yeah, a police officer in Alabama shot dead a man who was suffering from brain cancer and was having a psychotic incident following the medication that he'd been taking to stop the pain, and was behaving in what the officer described as an erratic manner, so he shot him dead. And it's been found in the courts because they tried to sue this police officer for doing that. And the judge in Alabama decided that, no, it was perfectly reasonable for this police officer to take action to protect the general public from a gentleman suffering from terminal brain cancer who was having a psychotic incident due to a reaction to the drugs. So what do they do in Alabama? Shoot 'em dead, eh? Yeah, what a place. Stay away from Alabama. If you want to know what the prison systems are like, read Sean Atwood's book, Hard Time. I highly recommend that. And I highly recommend staying away from the prisons in America. But as for work in the British prisons, what we've got over here is basically exploitation. I mean, when I was in the prison system, the meals for the prison staff, that would be me if I was daft enough to eat it, were prepared by prisoners. There's only one prison officer in charge of the canteen for staff. Yeah, that's the canteen where they serve the meals at breakfast time, at lunchtime and evening meal. There's only one prison officer in charge of that, and the rest was done by inmates. I mean, these inmates were subjected to the abuse and insults of the staff in the prison, so you can imagine what was happening there. I told you, I mentioned this previously, I'll mention it again. I was escorting the prisoners who were working as cooks and food preparation staff in the officers' canteen, and locking them up one night. They were pissing themselves laughing about something. I said, "Come on then, you bastards! What's so funny?" Well, they knew me, They said, "We can't tell you, boss. You'd be on it." I said, "Listen, I don't give a shit about it. Come on, tell me what's going on." And I said, "It's Friday, isn't it?" I said, "Yeah, it's Friday, all right, yeah." I said, "And I'm working all weekend, so what's so funny about that?" They said, "Oh, it's the usual stuff. We've been pissing on the fish, because on Friday it was always fish served in the prison officers' mess, the canteen, where they went for the lunches. And what they did was they take the fresh fish out and they marinated it in urine." And that's why they were pissing themselves laughing. Not only pissing on the fish, but pissing themselves laughing. Well, the staff used to urinate in the soup. I mean, it's only spreading it around, isn't it? That's what I think. Anyway, Tales from the Jails, here we are. Don't forget, on the 7th of November at Sean Atwood's channel, they're going to be screening that interview I did with him, but it's the 7th of November now, to coincide with the publication of my book, published by Gadfly Publishing, which is owned by Sean Atwood, and the title is HMP Manchester Prison Officer. So it's not my title, that's his title, but it's my book. I wrote it. Yeah, I actually did write it. No ghostwriters. Let me stop that. Yeah, right. Okay. This is a poem. So I get some reasonable reviews for my poetry lately. Something's going wrong, isn't it? Yeah. Was Larry not insulting me? Are you all right, Larry? We all know who Larry is. Mind you, he lives in Rotherham, doesn't he? Just outside Rotherham, in a tent on the moors. Yeah. So, some people collect stamps. Larry collects sheep. Anyway, this is Rainbow Warrior by John G. Sutton. Listen, this is a book about people in the green movement, And basically what I'm saying is, in this poem, is that if we do eradicate all the chemicals and all the things and all the control, all the pest control, all the rest of it, we are eventually going to get overrun. Because, I mean, basically we use insecticide and all the rest of it to control what we consider to be unwanted infestations. But, of course, it's not particularly environmentally friendly. So this is what happens if we follow it to the extreme. That's the theory of this poem, anyway. That's my reading of it. And it's Rainbow Warrior. Rainbow Warrior is the name of the ship that's run by Greenpeace, if you know. Anyway, this is called Rainbow Warrior by John G. Sutton. I'm a rainbow warrior. I'll start again because we were rudely interrupted by that stupid message there. Rainbow Warrior by John G. Sutton. I'm a rainbow warrior, as green as they come. No chlorofluorocarbons perfume my bum. March to Aldermaston with CND. I support animal rights, just wanna be free. I'm pro-conservation anti-acid rain, a left-of-centre trendy with an oversimple brain. I'm gonna save the planet, end nuclear fusion, throw the reds and the blues into utter confusion, when the proletariat all vote green and the rainbow warrior rules supreme. You'll be eating veg from an organic farm, saving the whales, wearing leaves to keep warm, making the world the place God planned when the rainbow warrior rules the land. We'll use no chemicals under the sun, in our homes fit for heroes, the battle's all won, no greenhouse effect to blight our lives, but lots and lots and lots of flies. There you go. That's Rainbow Warrior by John G. Sutton. Tales from the Jails. We'll speak again.